Hello kids! Welcome back to Reading for Vocabulary. I'm your host, Brian Stewart. In this lesson, we're starting a new level, level C, right? And in level C, we're talking about a lot of different subjects. We'll talk about science. So some lessons will be about science. Some lessons will be about social studies. Some lessons will be about health. So those are important, right? Of course, they're all important. Fine arts will also be the subject of other lessons. Fine arts like painting and sculpture and artists, right? Math, well, math is interesting. We can take a look at some lessons about math and a new subject, entertainment. So that will be interesting too. Also something new with level C is that some lessons will have short videos in them. So hopefully that will be fun and interesting to look at those. So, shall we get started with lesson number 1? You bet. Let's get going. Okay, number 1, lesson 1. We're talking about animals, and our subject, of course, is science, right? Especially biology, the study of life. So, animals, we're going to be looking at the name of the unit is In a Land Before Time. Actually, the name of the lesson. In a land before time. What does that mean? Well, think about it. When was time thought of, right? Human beings invented time, so this is like before humans, a long time ago. The earth is millions and millions and millions of years old. Humans haven't always been on the earth. So what was the earth like? What kind of animals lived on the earth before human beings? So in this lesson, we can learn about dinosaurs from their bones, because dinosaurs lived on the earth a long time before human beings came about. Okay, let's take a look here. We have a video for you. What exactly is a dinosaur? You probably know what a dinosaur is, right? There's many television shows, animation shows and movies about dinosaurs, right? You've probably seen some of those. Of course, a dinosaur is like a big, terrible lizard, right? It looks like this. Oh my gosh, look at that. That's kind of, oh my gosh. Look at that. That's a huge dinosaur. That's kind of scary, isn't it? Wah! Is he gone? Oh, he's still there. Okay, he's gone. We got rid of the dinosaur. Okay. Dinosaurs were really, really scary. We're very, very lucky that there are no more dinosaurs because they're huge. Some dinosaurs were huge. We'll learn more about dinosaurs in this lesson. Okay, but as we get started, of course, we need to learn some vocabulary. Let's take a look. The first vocabulary word, the definition, a hot place with a lot of plants. So if you think of a hot place, there are many plants there. What do we call that type of environment? We say it is a jungle. A jungle. And you can think if you go south, or if you go to Southeast Asia, if you go to Vietnam, Thailand, the Philippines, those are very hot places. There are many plants there. They have many jungles in those places. A hot place with a lot of plants. Jungle. Okay, next one. Oh, this is the opposite of a jungle, right? It's very cold. There's a lot of snow on the ground. But look at what happens when somebody walks across the snow. They're making marks. So this word is a mark made by a foot, right? When a person or an animal is walking in the snow, in the sand, in the mud, what do they leave behind them? They leave behind them a footprint. Footprint. This person is leaving many footprints behind them. Remember, footprint is singular, hana, right? If you say footprint, you mean hanaman. If you say footprints, you mean manayo, right? Many. So footprints. Be careful. Sometimes students will make that mistake. Footprint is only one, but you can't leave just one footprint. right? Unless you're jumping really far, right? So you leave footprints behind you. Next one. Ooh, what's this? This looks very old, doesn't it? This, of course, is the bone around your brain. This is a person's head, someone who died a long time ago. The only thing that's left is the bone. Bones last for a long time. Skin, hair, organs, those things dissolve and they go away after somebody dies. But the bone stays for a long time. So the bone around your brain, what do we call this bone? We call this bone a skull. Now that's a little hard to pronounce, right? S-K and L-L at the end. S-K, ska, ska, and L-L just L. So, and we have the U. Skull, skull. So we say that word as skull. Now, a lot of times when we see the skull, we think of death, right? That's a symbol for death. You guys know pirates, right? The pirate flag is a skull and crossbones. What that means is they take two bones and they cross them, right? Now, I'm not a very good artist, but I'll try to make a skull. No, I'll just make the crossbones. I can't really draw a skull. Am I doing okay? Yeah, I seem to be doing okay. It's kind of like a bone here, right? So the crossbones. So they'll have a flag and they'll have a skull on the top and they'll have crossbones. Skull and crossbones is a very common flag for pirates. If you see a pirate ship, they have a black flag and a white skull and crossbones on it. So skull is usually associated with death because pirates are bad guys, right? Okay. 4. The weather conditions in a certain place. So if you're talking about the weather conditions, it's hot and sunny or it's cold and snowy. How do we describe those conditions with one word? We say, what is the climate like? What is the climate? What is the climate like? Right? It's very common if you're talking to a friend, you make a friend on the internet or with email through your school, a program, and you meet a friend in Africa and you want to exchange emails with that friend. Or you meet a friend in Finland and you can ask them, what is the climate like in your country? The person in Africa will probably say hot and humid. The person in Finland will probably say cold and snowy. So what are the weather conditions in a certain place? Okay. Number 5, to continue to live. If something continues to live, they endure, they survive, right? I can't say it without saying the word, right? Survive. That's a little difficult word to say. Remember, survive. It's two sounds. 1, 2. Survive. Survive. So when you put them together, survive. One more time, survive. So survive means to continue to live, not die. So if something doesn't die, it continues to live. And this is for individuals, but it's also for groups too, right? Of course, individuals die all the time, but groups of animals might survive for a very long time, okay? 6, interesting and special. Very interesting, very special city, very beautiful city, right? What do we say? It's remarkable. Now this is a long word, right? Remarkable. If you're going to split it up into sounds, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 syllables. Remarkable. Remarkable. And you know, remark, you could probably put it there too. Remark. You don't have to say remarkable, but you know, it depends on how you pronounce it. So you can say, if you put them all together, it sounds remarkable. Remarkable. Okay, one more time. Remarkable. Remarkable, interesting, and special. Okay, let's move on to number 7. to keep from being ruined. Of course, if you leave food open to the air, it will begin to smell, it will go bad. But you want to keep it from being ruined. You want to keep it in its original state or close to its original state. What do? You preserve it. Preserve. So again, we have two sounds, preserve. Now this looks like serve, but don't say preserve, say preserve. Preserve. Okay? And that is a verb, to keep something from being ruined, to preserve something. So you are going to keep it in the original state so it doesn't get old. If you want to keep food for a long time, you put it in a can, you preserve it. So you can eat it 2 months later, 4 months later, maybe even a year later. But even food in a can, you can't keep it forever, right? You got to eat it sometime because it will get ruined after a certain amount of time. But you can preserve it for a long time in a can. 8. Well, it's a strange looking animal, right? What animal is this? Do you know? Maybe you learned from history or from lessons in school. What's wrong with this pen? Oh, here we go. Dodo. It's a dodo bird. Have you heard of the dodo bird before? The dodo bird, well, that's weird. The dodo bird went extinct. And that's our word, extinct. So when people think of the word extinct, it's very common to think of the dodo bird. It's a very famous bird that died when human beings came to the island where it lived. Extinct means no longer in existence. The human beings killed all the dodo birds, and they brought dogs with them. The dogs also hunted the birds. So in a very short time, all the dodo birds went extinct. So we can use the word go, this is past tense, right? To go extinct, the dodo bird went extinct, past tense, okay? No longer in existence is extinct. And many animals have become extinct over the history of the earth. The earth's history is very, 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 very long. And many animals have gone extinct, many types of animals. 9. Sometimes, of course, animals will leave evidence that they existed. And that evidence is their remains. The remains. What is left behind? The remains of an animal or plant. So it's an animal or a plant. Not just animal, but also plants leave remains, and you can find them in the rocks. Usually the animal or plant dies in mud, and the mud is compressed under pressure, and that mud becomes rock. Well, the imprint of the animal's body or the plant's body is left or made into the rock. And these are very neat if you find them. What am I talking about? I'm talking about fossils. It's very cool, very neat if you find a fossil in the rock. So next time you're in the country, next time you're in walking through the mountains or walking through a field and you see some interesting rocks, take a look at them. See if you can find any fossils. Who knows? Maybe you'll find an interesting fossil. Okay, next word. This one is to be present in a place. This is a picture. It looks like Mars. Of course, many scientists have been wondering if water exists on Mars. So if water is present in a place like water is on Mars, then water exists on Mars. And of course, we now know that at the North Pole and the South Pole, you can't see it because Mars is tilted like this, you can't see the South Pole, but at the North Pole, there's frozen water, ice, right? So there is water. Water does exist on Mars, okay? Number 11, a small plant with many branches. So these are very common. We see these around buildings and in parks. People like to grow them because they form like a small wall. So, people don't go over it. Of course, we call it a bush. A bush. Now, of course, these are little bushes. A lot of bushes in a line you call a hedge. A hedge, right? And this is like a hedge. It's a line of bushes that people will make in a park or near a building to, like a small little wall. But there's as many bushes. A small plant with many branches, we call it a bush. Not a tree, right? We can say there's like two main types of plants we can see easily. One is a tree. Of course, a tree grows very big. I got a mushroom cloud here. Okay, that's a tree. And then, of course, you have a little bush, right? So a bush and a tree, right? So we talk about bushes and we talk about trees. Those are the two main types of plants. Of course, you have other types, but usually we see trees and bushes. Number 12, a climbing plant. This is another type of plant. Climbing plant, what does it mean? A plant that climbs? Yes, because these branches or long, thin stems, right? You can say a branch is like a tree branch. It's very thick and it's very strong. But some plants are they have arms or branches that are very small and they're not strong. You can bend them. And we call those stems, okay? So long, thin stems. And this is a plant with long, thin stems that grow and climb up walls. So it's a climbing plant. We call it a vine. So on some very old buildings, especially old brick buildings, you can see that they're covered with a green plant because the plant, it's called a vine, has grown up and they hook. They've got little hooks on the stems and they hook onto the wall and they climb up the wall. Very nice looking, very neat. 13, to wind together. So if you take some dead branches, some stems, and you wind them together like this, what are you doing? It's a verb, to twist, to wind together. You can wind plants together. You can wind I'm too old, I can't do it. You can wind your arms together, right? You can wind rope together. You can wind or you can twist many things. So you can twist your arms, you can twist rope, you can twist your hair, you can twist something together or to wind together. 14, oh, he's having a lot of fun, isn't he? Don't you wish you could have fun like that? Well, you can, but don't tell your mom I told you to go out and play in the mud, okay? Wet dirt, of course, I just said it, it's mud. And sometimes in Korea, I forgot where it was, I'm not sure the name, I'm a little worried if I mispronounce it. Is Boryung Mud Festival, is that right? Yeah, in Korea, you have a mud festival at Boryung-shi, or Boryung place, I'm not sure. But many people will go there and they'll play in the mud, right? During the summer, it's a nice thing to do. It's cool and it's wet. So people, it's kind of like water, playing in the water. So it's mud and people will play in it. People will throw it at each other. Of course, normally, don't step in it because if you're wearing nice clothes, your mother will get angry if you get mud on your clothes. Okay. Next word. An animal that lived long ago but is now extinct. That's one of the words we learned before. Extinct. It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. It did not survive. And of course we saw this animal before, right? The video that I was scared of before. That's a scary animal, right? Of course, it is a dinosaur. It's an animal that lived long ago but is now extinct. It doesn't exist anymore. Whew. Because if it did, we would be in big danger, right? There would be too many of them. Dinosaur, dinosaur, three sounds. Dinosaur. It looks like dinosaur, but we say dinosaur, dinosaur, okay? Some people can say dinosaur, but most common it's dinosaur, dinosaur. Okay, another word here, a place where you can see many important things. So if you want to learn about things that existed a long, long time ago, or things that exist now, but usually they're from history. And people will take them and display them in certain buildings. What is that building called? It's called a museum. 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 A place where you can see many important things. So here we see things from ancient Egypt, right? A long time ago, we can see the mummies, right? And you can see mummies in a museum. You can see things from your country that existed a long time ago in a museum. In natural museums, natural history museums, we can see animals that existed a long time ago in natural history museums. Okay, let's go over exercise here. The first exercise has to do with antonyms. Antonym. What is an antonym? Antonym means, let's draw that line here a little bit more slowly. Antonym means words that have opposite, opposite meaning. It's like pandero, right? Pandero, opposite meaning, antonym. So our instruction, our direction is match the words in the box here with their antonyms listed below. So these words are the opposite of these words. That's what we have to do. We have to match the opposites, okay? The words are preserved, right? We learned the word preserve. We learned that it was a verb. So now it's used with an ed, so it's past tense, like preserved. They have been preserved. Next one, jungle, jungle. Next one, survive, survive. And last one, extinct, extinct. Okay, what are the opposites of these words? Number one is alive. What is the opposite meaning of alive? Something that is not alive anymore. It's dead, and maybe all of them are dead. Then we can say extinct. If they're extinct, they're dead. They're gone, no more. But if they're alive, they continue to exist. Okay, next one, desert. What is a desert? A desert is a hot place, but it has no plants. No plants grow in a desert. It's just dirt or just sand. There's no plants. So what's the opposite of a desert? We could say it's a jungle, because a jungle has many, many plants. There's a lot of water in the jungle. There is no water in the desert, or very little water in the desert. 3, die. So that's a sad word, right? Die. So what's the opposite of die? If something dies, right, it doesn't what? It doesn't survive any longer. It's not alive, right? By the way, die and alive, those are also antonyms, aren't they? Die and survive are also antonyms. Okay. The last one here, ruined. If something is ruined, it's been spoiled, it has changed from its original condition. But if you keep something in the original condition, it doesn't change, you have preserved it. It's not ruined, it is preserved. It's not ruined, it's preserved. Okay? So those are the antonyms, the opposite meaning of these words. Now our next exercise is talking about synonyms, right? Before we talked about antonyms, now we're going to talk about synonyms. What does synonyms mean? Synonym is same. The same meaning. So a synonym is a word or two words that have the same or similar. Bistandeo, right? Maybe not tokateo, but bistandeo. Okay? So maybe not exactly the same, but similar meanings. Okay? Same meanings. Match the words in the box with their synonyms listed below. So these words in the box, we need to match them with the word that has the same or similar meaning. Similar. So same or similar meaning. Okay, let's look at the words in the box first. We have skull. Skull. Next word, footprints. Footprints. The next word is remarkable. Remarkable. The next one is climate. Climate. Okay? Now we have to match these words in the box to the same or similar meanings of these words here. The first word is amazing. Amazing. It's really amazing. It amazes you. It impresses you. It's really exceptional. What do we say is a similar meaning? We would say, of course, remarkable. Remarkable is similar to amazing. If you think, wow, that's amazing, it is remarkable. Okay, the similar meaning. Number 2 is head. Okay, so head, not the same meaning, but similar meaning for head. What's in your head, right? What is that bone there? We could say it's the skull. So skull isn't the same as head, but it is similar. Similar. Skull and head are similar. 3, weather. So we're talking about the weather in a certain place, especially. We're talking about what? What word has to do with weather? Of course, this word means weather. Climate. So climate. Weather is climate. Okay, the last one is marks. Now, when we learned this word in the vocabulary, we said marks that are left by feet, right? If somebody's walking along, especially in the snow or the sand, they leave marks in the snow or the sand. What do we call those marks? We call those marks yogita. Right here, footprints, right? Sorry. Yogita. We call them footprints. Okay, so marks are footprints that we leave behind us by our feet. Okay, well that wraps up the vocabulary section. We're going to take a short break here. We'll come back and look at the reading, so don't go away. Okay, let's go over the reading together. As you know, we're talking about dinosaurs in this unit. So this reading will be talking about dinosaurs. Of course, like I said, dinosaurs lived a long, long time ago in a land before time, before human beings started recording time or recording history. So, what was the Earth like 200 million years ago? 200 million years? I can't even think about that. That's too much. But it's really interesting. 200 million years ago. How many zeros is that? That's 200. Then we have million. Oh my gosh, look at how many zeros I'm writing. 200 million years ago. It's a long time. Especially think about this. Human beings, our ancestors, humans have only been on the earth for 200,000 years, about 200,000 years. So 200,000 years, that's even too much for me to think about. Can you think about that? That's a long time. It's even hard for us to think about 1,000 years. We kind of can because we know what happened 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. We don't know much. 4,000? No. 200,000? We have no idea. 200 million? That's really long. It's almost impossible to think about how long ago that was. We just know it's a really, really long time ago. Well, 200 million years ago, what was the Earth like? A long, 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 long time before human beings were on the Earth. Well, the Earth had warm weather. The weather was warm, and there was plenty of rain. So, sounds good, right? It's warm, maybe not a lot of snow, but there's a lot of rain. A lot of rain came down. Of course, when it's warm and there's a lot of rain, what happens? You get tall trees, thick bushes, and twisting vines grow. So warm weather, lots of rain, a lot of different plants will grow. In these jungles, because remember, warm or hot with a lot of plants, that's a jungle. So there were many jungles on Earth 200 million years ago. In these jungles, remarkable creatures appeared. Okay? So, in these jungles, of course, the remarkable creatures we're talking about are these, and we'll see that on the next slide. But in these jungles, remarkable creatures could grow. They had a lot of plants to eat. For about 150 million years, dinosaurs were the remarkable creatures. They were amazing creatures, as we will see in this reading passage. So for about 150 million years, dinosaurs ruled the earth. Let's just go do the reading real quick. Some of these four-legged animals were 17 meters tall. They could eat the leaves off the top of a tree. The heaviest dinosaurs weighed as much as 20 elephants. Others, however, were no bigger than chickens, right? Small. So, what we see here is that 150 million years ago, right? So about 200 million years ago, this is what the Earth was like. During about 50 million years, dinosaurs started to appear, and there were many different creatures. Many of them were four-legged. They had four legs, as we can see here. Four legs, four legs, four legs. This one you can't see. It only had two legs, the Tyrannosaurus rex. The other two legs were like arms, and some of them had claws on there that were very dangerous. So some dinosaurs had two legs, but many dinosaurs had four legs. Four-legged animals. 17 meters tall. Oh my gosh, that's so high, right? That's like a building. That's these creatures here. They were so tall so they could reach the leaves on the tops of the trees and eat them. So there were very tall dinosaurs. There were very heavy dinosaurs. You say muguwa, right? These dinosaurs were so heavy, they weighed as much as 20 elephants. So these dinosaurs, their weight was the same as 20 elephants. Think about an elephant. Oh, that's a really heavy animal. Now think about 20 elephants, and that's one big dinosaur. Okay? That's amazing. That's very remarkable. Others, however, no, it says the heaviest dinosaurs, but other dinosaurs weren't so heavy. They were no bigger than chickens. So a lot of people don't realize that. But in this time, we think about dinosaurs as being really big and terrible and scary, but there were also many dinosaurs that were very small. And there were many of them, and they would be running around also. Of course, we don't think about them because they're so small. We are more impressed by the big dinosaurs. But it's also important to remember that many dinosaurs were also very small. Okay, maybe you've heard of them. We call them dinosaurs. Of course, that's what I've been calling them already in this reading. This is just kind of, so the beginning of this reading passage was just kind of defining what dinosaurs were and when they lived. So 200 million years ago, and then for about 150 million years, they lived. They ruled the earth. It means they were the biggest creatures. They were the dominant species on the earth. Okay? We call them dinosaurs. Now we see what they are. No one has ever seen a living dinosaur. Of course, like I said, that was a long, long time ago. Millions of years before human beings came about. So, if we never saw a dinosaur, how do we know they existed? The answer is fossils. Fossils are dinosaur bones that we find in the ground. That's very interesting. A long time ago, when human beings were running around, they didn't really know where they came from or how old the earth was. Sometimes people would find these really big bones in the ground. So what is that? Is it a giant? Right? Where did these bones come from? Well, science has investigated this evidence. What are these bones? Where did they come from? Those are the fossil remains from these very remarkable creatures that lived so long ago, nobody remembers them, nobody ever even saw them. So let's start here. No one has ever seen a living dinosaur. How do we know they existed? Of course, the answer is fossils. Fossils are dinosaur bones that we find in the ground. Dinosaur bones, a long time ago, the ground is building up over them, so they're underground. We find them in the ground. These fossils can show us what dinosaurs looked like. A dinosaur skull tells us what their head looked like. To see what shape their bodies were, scientists put their bones back together. Okay, so what is this passage telling us here? This passage is telling us that the fossils, these fossils, they're referring back to the bones. The fossils are the bones. They can show us what dinosaurs looked like. Because a dinosaur skull, right, can show you what the shape of the head. Remember, before we saw the human skull, we can kind of guess what the human head looked like, right? On top of the skull. We can see where the eyes were, where the nose was, where the mouth was. So we can do the same thing with the dinosaur skull. We can see, wow, big mouth, big teeth. The eyes were here, the nose was here. What did it look like? We can see that if we look at the skull. To see what shape their bodies were, right? Scientists put their bones back together. So it's very lucky if a scientist or somebody finds the bones from a whole dinosaur and they can get those bones at the same place and put them all together, back together, then you get something like this. It's the skeleton. We call that the skeleton. A skeleton is the full assembly of all the bones in a body. That's the skeleton. You put them back together, now you have the skeleton of the dinosaur. Now, what else can we find out from dinosaurs? We have their bones, we have their skulls. Skulls are a type of bone, so we can figure out what they look like. But scientists can also find other things. Dinosaur footprints and teeth were also preserved or saved in the mud they walked in. Footprints can show us how they moved and ran. Their teeth tell us about what they ate. So what happened to all of the dinosaurs? How did they become extinct? Let's break this down into two parts. This part here and then the second part. This is the other thing that scientists can use to find out what dinosaurs were like a long time ago. Remember, nobody ever saw a dinosaur. But we can look at the footprints. If we see footprints that were saved in the mud, right? Think about this. 120 million years ago, a dinosaur is walking along, steps in the mud. It leaves a footprint. Then that footprint is not washed away. Maybe it's filled with sand or something else. And then a lot of pressure is put on top of it. And that footprint is preserved. And a long time after that, we can find those footprints in the rock that's made from the mud. So it's preserved. This is interesting. We're also preserved or saved. Or saved, sometimes you see that. A word and then a comma and then a comma. Sometimes you define what does that word mean like this. Preserved or saved. Saved means preserved. So sometimes you can find the definition of a word. The writer will put the definition of a word right after it, especially if it's a long word like preserved or a difficult word. Preserved or saved in the mud. So footprints and teeth, right? Footprints can show us how they moved and ran. So by studying the footprint, right, and of course you have many footprints, you can see how far they could stretch their legs. How did they walk? Or if they ran, how did they run? Okay, that's very interesting. We can figure that out by looking at the footprints. Teeth, if you find teeth, and teeth are like bones, right? They're made of the same hard substance. Teeth tell us about what they ate. Think about that. If the tooth that they find is like this and it's very sharp, what does that tell you? That tells you the dinosaur probably ate meat, because a tooth like that will cut flesh and skin. But if the tooth was like this, right, came up like this and was like that, you know, whoop, whoop. Okay, I'm not a very good artist. But if the tooth looked like that, it was flat on top, that tells you the dinosaur or the animal probably ate plants, right? And it needed teeth like that to crush the plants. Okay, so meat eater, plant eater. The teeth can tell us about what they ate. So we can find out a lot of things from the evidence, from the remains of dinosaurs that have been left behind. Okay, now after this we kind of change the subject a little bit. So what happened to all of the dinosaurs? That means we can find all this evidence of the dinosaurs, but they're extinct. They're no longer here. So the question is, what happened? Where'd they go? right? Did they all get in a spaceship and go to another planet? No. How did they become extinct? How did they disappear? Why didn't they survive? Why didn't the dinosaurs survive? Well, that's the next part. Let's read it together. Many people think the dinosaurs all died when the Earth's climate changed. The planet became colder and the dinosaurs couldn't survive. Today, they may be extinct, but movies, television, and museums are keeping dinosaurs alive in our minds. Okay, so what does this say here? There are many theories about why the dinosaurs died out. We don't know for sure, right? There are many theories. A theory is an idea or a guess. Many people, one theory is that the dinosaurs died when the Earth's climate changed. Remember, climate means weather. At the beginning of this passage, they were talking about what was the Earth like 200 million years ago. It was warm. It rained a lot. Well, as we know, climates change on the Earth. The Earth's climate changes over time. Sometimes it gets warm and hot. Sometimes there's a lot of rain. Sometimes there's no rain. Sometimes it gets cold. Sometimes in the Earth's history, the Earth has just been like a big snowball covered in ice. Okay? So that has also happened to the Earth in its history. So the Earth's climate is always changing. If the Earth's climate changed from warm, wet, lots of rain, to maybe really cold with lots of ice, the dinosaurs couldn't survive. They all died out. That's one idea. Another idea, not here, is that an asteroid came and hit the Earth, and it caused such destruction that the dinosaurs died. That's another theory. We don't know for sure. We can only guess based on the evidence. The planet, well, in this theory, if the climate changed, the planet became colder and the dinosaurs couldn't survive. They couldn't live. They couldn't continue to live. Today they may be extinct, but that's interesting because we know that birds actually are descendants from dinosaurs. So there really are dinosaurs still on Earth. They're called birds. Birds are the ones that survived. But movies, okay, so this says today they may be extinct. Maybe they're extinct, right? But movies, television, and museums are keeping dinosaurs alive in our minds? What does that mean? It means, yeah, dinosaurs may be gone. They're all dead. But we can still think about dinosaurs. They can live in our imagination. They can live in our minds because we can see movies about them. We can read books about them. And we can go to the museums and see what they looked like. So that's very interesting. You can keep something alive in your mind if you think about it. Even though they're dead, they're gone, they can still live on in your mind. Interesting. Okay, let's go over the comprehension questions. Again, number one, this story is about. What is this story about? So think about what's the subject that the entire story is about. Not just a little detail, but what is the overall topic of the passage. Is it about the jungle? No, we talked about the jungle just a little bit. So it's not the whole story was not about the jungle. Was the story about 200 million years ago? That's when the story started, right? But it was also about, 150 million years ago, and also for a very long time, dinosaurs ruled the earth. So it's not just 200 million years ago. Besides, that's not the main subject of the passage. C, dinosaurs. Hey, this story was about dinosaurs, wasn't it? That's the right answer. Because the story started a long time ago when dinosaurs appeared. It talked about how big they were, how tall they were, how heavy they were, how do we know that they existed, what the remains were, the fossils, the bones, the teeth, the footprints, and a little bit about why they died out or what was the reason that they went extinct. And even though they're extinct, they still live in our minds. All of that information is about dinosaurs. So this story is about dinosaurs. Just looking at D, is the story about fossils? No, because fossils was a part of the story, sure, but we also talked about footprints, we talked about teeth, we talked about many other things than fossils. The main subject of this story was dinosaurs. Okay, number 2. Remember we talked about dinosaurs? You know, they were really tall, some of them were very heavy, right? Some dinosaurs were so tall they could do what? So tall they could. And remember when you use so tall, so hot, so cold, they could do something. They were so tall they could do what? They were so tall they could eat 20 elephants. It doesn't matter how tall something is. That doesn't tell you how much they could eat, right? So that doesn't make sense. B, they could make footprints in the mud. Well, that doesn't make sense either, because it doesn't matter if an animal is tall or short. They all leave footprints in the mud. So that doesn't make sense. They were so tall they could survive a cold climate. Again, it doesn't matter if an animal's tall or small and it's very cold. That doesn't help them. Just being tall doesn't help you survive a cold climate, or being short, right? It probably depends more on what kind of fur or what kind of temperature your body has to be at. So that doesn't make sense either. It's got to be D. We're so tall they could eat the leaves off the top of a tree. That's the only one that makes sense, right? Because a tree is very tall. If you want to eat the leaves on the top of a tree, you have to be tall. So that's the only one that makes sense. Some dinosaurs were so tall they could eat the leaves off the top of a tree. And that is our answer. Eat the leaves off the top of a tree, because a tree is very tall and you have to be very tall to eat those leaves. Okay, moving on to number 3. The sentence is, dinosaurs are extinct, but they beep, right? What do? A, still survive. Well, be careful with this, because, I know the sentence said they still survive, in our imagination, but if you just say they still survive, that means they actually still survive. You can go out and see them. But thank goodness we can't, right? So that's not correct. Dinosaurs are extinct, but they still survive. In fact, that doesn't make any sense, because if something is extinct, it's not surviving anymore. That contradicts each other, okay? So extinct and still survive contradict each other. Doesn't make sense. B, dinosaurs are extinct, but they still eat leaves off tall trees. Well, that also doesn't make sense, because they're extinct. If they're gone, how can they still eat leaves off trees? They're dead. They're not around. So that doesn't make sense either. C, but they live in our minds. Okay. We saw that in the passage, right? We saw that even though dinosaurs are extinct, we can still think about them, right? Because we see them in television, we see them in movies, we can read about them in books, we can go to museums and see them, or their bones, right? So this is the right answer. They're extinct, but they live in our minds. That's the right answer. What about D? Dinosaurs are extinct, but they will come back. I don't think so, right? That's kind of silly. There's no guarantee the dinosaurs will come back. I mean, maybe, if human beings are stupid and they kill each other in a nuclear war, we hope that doesn't happen. Maybe millions of years from now, new life forms looking like dinosaurs will come back, but that's fantastic. That's very small chance. We can't imagine that, and it's very, very unlikely. I hope it's very, very unlikely. So that's not a good answer. The passage said dinosaurs are extinct, but they still live in our minds, in television, in museums, and in books. Okay? So they can still live in our minds. And that's an interesting idea we talked about. Number 4. Dinosaur beep and beep, huh? Okay, that's a little hard to figure out, right? But let's look at the answers. Dinosaur beep and beep were preserved in the mud. So what was preserved in the mud from dinosaurs? Dinosaur bones and skin? Bones and skin. Well, bones were preserved, but what about skin? The passage didn't say anything about dinosaur skin being preserved in the mud, so we can't choose that one. What about dinosaur skulls and claws were preserved in the mud? Well, we heard that skulls were preserved, but did we hear anything about claws? The passage did not mention claws at all. Claws, by the way, of course, are animal fingernails, right, that are very strong and that can, scratch something. If you have a dog, the dog has claws. If you have a cat, the cat has very sharp claws, okay? So, but the passage didn't say anything about claws, so we can't choose B. Dinosaur teeth and footprints were preserved in the mud. This passage did talk about teeth. It did talk about footprints. It said that those things were preserved in the mud, so that is the right answer. What about dinosaur eggs and eyeballs? Ugh, yuck, right? Well, it didn't say anything about eggs or eyeballs in the story. I would have remembered that. You would have remembered that. So, no, D is not the right answer. So, C, dinosaur teeth and footprints were preserved in the mud. That is the correct answer. Okay, let's do a little review again. Oh, there's our scary guy again, our dinosaur, right? But don't worry, it's just a model. It's not real. They're extinct. Whew, we don't have to worry. Okay, so what can we say about dinosaurs? We learned a lot of interesting things. First of all, when did dinosaurs live? For about 150 million years. That's a long time, right? It's very difficult to think about that time period. Dinosaurs ruled the earth. It means they existed during that time. In fact, they were the biggest and the most successful creatures on the earth for 150 million years. By the way, that's something that they have over us. Human beings have only ruled the earth for about a couple 100,000 years, right? Dinosaurs, 150 million years. That's a really long time. Okay, what else can we say about dinosaurs? Fossils are dinosaur bones that we find in the ground. So the bones of the dinosaurs that were put in the ground and some of them turned to rock, those are fossils that we can find in the ground. They tell us about the dinosaurs and that they had lived a long time ago, even though we don't remember them. Finally, another thing about dinosaurs, footprints can show us how they moved and ran. So when they were walking, they left footprints in the mud. That shows us how they moved and how they ran. So even though dinosaurs are long gone, we can still find evidence of them. We can find their bones. We can find their footprints. We can find teeth from the dinosaurs. And those things tell us a lot about the dinosaurs. How long they lived. What did they eat? How did they move about? Okay? There's still a lot of things we don't know about dinosaurs because, of course, no human being has ever seen a dinosaur. And it's been such a long time since the time that dinosaurs died and human beings started to come about. So all that we can do is look at the evidence, the fossils and other things. But it's very fascinating. It's very interesting to think about these amazing, remarkable creatures that lived for so long on the earth. And even though they're dead, we can still think about them and they live on in our minds. Okay, well that wraps it up for this lesson. We'll see you again next time. Take care, everybody.